And today we are going into the world of Hypergraph. So, if anyone here has been watching the Twitter feed, the announcements, the newsletters, been seeing the announcement at ETH Global Con, we have Hypergraph live. And with that, we have one of the lead developers who is working on Hypergraph with us today. So I just want to get right to it and say hello and welcome to Nick, who has been working hard for many months on Hypergraph. And I would know this because I actually hopped into the engineering squad for a few months just to help out where I could. But this guy's been in the trenches for much longer. And I just want to say thank you for coming on, Nick. And how you doing today? Welcome to Graph Builders Office Hours.
Thank you. Pretty good. Thanks for having me. And yeah, fun to be here. Let's see. Yeah, happy to show you a bit about Hypergraph, especially how to get started, and happy to answer any questions. And yeah,
Awesome.
looking
Yeah.
forward.
So we're just going to hang out today. We don't really have a formal structure with Graph Builders office hours. So I think just for the sake of everyone tuning in right now, backing up a little bit, how would you describe Hypergraph? What is Hypergraph? And just high level. Let's not go into super detail right now. What exactly is Hypergraph?
Yeah, so it's an application framework. That's the most important thing. Um, and the thing is, obviously for Web3 applications. And what we want to do with it's still in its early stages. Don't use it in production. It's a developer preview. Um, but basically, what we want to do with it is um, give people a framework where you can have private data, which then is also like end-to-end encrypted, um, and public data, which is living on the knowledge graph. And then basically the data there is living in IPFS and it's verified via transactions and basically provable. And yeah, the idea is, but yeah, doing all of this by hand, like working with end-to-end encrypted data for
Yeah.
private data, and then on the
It's a
other hand,
lot if you try to do it by hand. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so we basically wanna we are building this framework that should make it very very easy and smooth to integrate with the knowledge graph and yeah, have this private part as well,
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
just have a couple of hooks and you should be able to get going and don't have to worry about backend. I mean, you can host the sync server that we use for the private data yourself, but you can
Mhm.
also use an existing one. This is the goal and idea.
Yeah.
And
I,
then
I just got to say, like, after working on Hypergraph a little bit, it took me a minute to fully understand what hypergraph was. And I was looking at the code and I'm like, where does this fit? And I'm understanding, okay, where is this in the market? And then I kept on seeing the direct targeting of hypergraph at pain points of specifically Web3 development. And so you went over a few of those pain points right now. I feel that one of those pain points that I was found was the composability of data is really, really a big thing in Web3. It's like, oh, it's composability of data, but what is that data? And it's financial data. And that's wonderful that financial data is composable. It feels, and if you can go into a little bit about why hypergraph is different in terms of composability, in terms of is it financial data, or what are we talking about here in terms of how this Web3 framework and how it's angling itself?
yeah, so in general, we don't only think about financial data. It's basically all sorts of data. So it's like really a full, it's full competition for like Web2 frameworks to build your custom applications. I don't know,
Yeah, that's a
podcast.
great, I think that's a great way of saying it and really succinctly. There's been a complete lack of Web3 applications, and there's absolutely lots of DeFi. There's tons of that. And that's based on a lot of fundamentals that crypto is. And that fundamentals is ERC20 and all of these different transactions. It feels like this shift into hypergraph being not just financial composability, but data, just data composability. It's a huge scope shift. And it took me a minute to get my head around it. I'm kind of trying to be a little bit, high level on this right now before we get into it. But is that fair to say that, from my perspective, it feels like Hypergraph is taking a narrow financial shift and finding the success that, seeing the success that ERC20 and the financial markets and crypto markets has had, and we're taking the learnings from that and putting it to this data composability layer. Is that fair? Or is that there's similarities there?
Yeah, I think you could say I probably would phrase it differently. I would rather say there's the whole um, uh, blockchains and so on. They have this opportunity of making things provable, and you have the cryptography underneath helps to like have really certainty about data, and it's not lost if you replicate it with IPFS and so on, and it's not in a silo.
Hmm.
And basically, and especially the privacy aspect, if I put something in Notion, you have no idea where the data goes because it's in that database and they can access it.
Yep.
And we really want to, the goal is to really step up the game that you as a developer, if it's public, it's provable. If it's
Hmm.
private, it's end-to-end encrypted. Of
Hmm.
course, you can do anything else with your data as well, but the goal is to really like step up the game and leverage the amazing infrastructure that exists to build something that is on a different level or has different goals. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah.
we don't need it, that's fine. And then maybe we create a good enough. I mean, it's also certainly a goal that the developer experience should be, or yeah, good enough that you can even go without it, or you yeah, it's like the minimum standard and it works.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, uh,
For before we get into are we going to have time? Would you like to go into the actual code or show anything off? I'm just curious. Would that be something you want to do today, or
yeah,
show
I
off
think
something? Okay.
the best thing is to I could create a fresh app,
Sure.
show
Sure.
that,
Sure.
so people see a bit about how to get started,
Sure.
and
Yeah,
then
that'd be great.
explain.
And then before we get into that, if
Yeah.
I want to ask you personally, is there one thing about Hypergraph that you personally like the most? Just curious about your own opinion on this, because if there's one feature that you're like, that is really badass, like that's Nick's favorite. I'm curious what that is.
I don't really have a favorite at the moment.
You sound like a professional engineer. I really I appreciate that.
Well, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll have to say, Nick, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we can go into what you've been working on for many months now.
Sounds good. Let me share the screen. So, um, can you see the screen?
Yes. Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Then, yeah, what I'm gonna do is I simply will follow the quick start tutorial um, just to create a new app. And yeah, so you can find the documentation here on the docs.hypergraph.com. This is the homepage, and then you can get here to the quick start, and we wrote all the documentation. Um, and yeah, let's get started right away. So what you can do is you can create a new application. Um, Still have to get you, yeah. So this is a command, and it will ask you, I don't know if you can see this well enough, but what's the name of your app? And the default is like my Hypergraph app, and we simply gonna say, gonna press enter to choose that, but I could use a different name. And now we have two templates already that you can choose from. One is like Lead plus React, and then Next.js template, and I'm gonna simply use the weak one, and then we also allow you to choose your package manager, and I'm gonna go with PNPM because yeah, I'm used to PNPM and it works well for me. And what it does now is it basically creates the whole project structure, install the dependencies, and what you can see here, it successfully scaffolded the application, and we can now go into the application. We can run do a pnpm run dev. So this one here, and why is there Git? We also initialize a Git repository with a first commit. So if you look here, you can see this is the initial commit, um, and but well, it's solely because we have the log file now created because of the pnpm install. Um, and what I'm gonna do now is pnpm dev, and then it will create a, and I'll show you the code in a bit, but let me first, so wait a second, not used to these two screens, so let's see it here, that's fine. So, and this is basically the starting application that you can see when you boot it up. So you get right into, if you haven't looked at the code yet, it tells you a bit about like what Hypergraph can do, and you can basically we show the call, like three call to actions that make a lot of sense is explore public knowledge, manage your data, and explore the docs. The docs you already have seen, so if I click here, we directly would go to the docs. But one thing you could see is, for example, explore public knowledge, and that means we can fetch actual public knowledge from the knowledge graph, which is coming from an indexer service, and then this exists there, and you can simply query it and get the data, and then work with the data and do something with it. Um, in this case, these are like crypto projects, and yeah, these are just already in the data set of the public knowledge graph. We can query for them. And then we could also manage private data, but before I do that, I want to show a bit of the code so you get a feel for it, how this works, and
Real quick,
yeah.
if just to add a little bit of point here, as we're looking at knowledge and data that's already in the knowledge graph, if there's a succinct way to describe what is knowledge in a knowledge graph for the audience who might be new to the concept of knowledge graphs, how would you describe that?
So, wait a second, let me, that's the wrong thing. I'm in the wrong folder. Um, Test projects, my Hypergraph app, cursor, yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Um,
The
so, basically, knowledge in a knowledge graph. This is basically the public part, and this is exactly what I meant with what we are working on is a specification called the GSC20, and you can find it here. Let me get it over here.
yeah, I'll share the links in the chat with that too. I got that. I have that
Yeah.
right here.
Okay. This is the GSC20 library. There's a library, but there is the spec as well, and this is an updated version of it that still needs to get merged. But basically, this is the knowledge graph specification. And this specification specifies about a couple of concepts, but high level is basically you have spaces. You can think of it as like a workspace. You have entities, which are kind of like objects, and then you have values onto them, and you can set up relations between them. And this is the data model that we provide. It's kind of a graph-based data model that allows you then to work with and basically represent data. And with entities, values, and relations in spaces, you can basically represent all sorts of data, and as a specification and implementation with protobuf and so on, how it's like encoded and stored on IPFS, and then you have the indexer, which provides a GraphQL API, which is like indexing all of this, and but this is exactly the point of like this is all complex, and
Yeah, and knowledge graphs get very complex quickly,
yes,
and I feel there's such a kindness within this framework and also the SDK to do its very best to abstract that away.
Yeah,
And if you want, if anyone out there listening wants to dive in, feel free. Go into as deep as you can into GRC20 and learn all about how the spec really is the backbone of knowledge graphs and this push for the graphs version of knowledge graphs. And now Hypergraph is abstracting that complexity as much as it can away from developers.
exactly. Yeah, that's that's the idea. Yeah, and basically what we and I can go right into this here. What we want to do as much as
Could
possible
you
is
could you make the screen a little bit bigger just for anyone watching? There you go. Thank you.
yeah, that's better.
Yep.
Basically, we want to allow you to define a schema. And then we're currently working on a UI tool called TypeSync, so that you can directly map the schema with its properties and values and relations to the schema of the public knowledge graph. But basically, for you, it should be very simple to create a schema that you can use locally, and you don't have to know what you have to know basically that you can define the schema and then you can say, for example, I could say now addresses and say, then you can have a relation as well. Um, yeah, but this is it's going like auto completion. They can simply say, okay, project can have addresses, and this is all you should need to do to basically have create the structure, the schema, how define how what kind of entities exist, and then you can work with the data. And I want to show you a bit of how this actually looks like. For
So
example,
real quick, just to make it super clear, this is the starting point of where developers would likely begin their journey into Hypergraph. It's with the database, with the actual shape of the database,
yeah,
and that currently is in this TS, the schema.ts, coming out in the next few weeks, months. I'm not going to put a week or month on it because development is development, but
I think
uh,
that.
yeah, there's a UI coming out that will abstract
Yeah.
this away even further.
The TypeSync already exists, but we learned a couple of lessons in the last couple of months, and basically last week made a direction shift. Initially, TypeSync was designed as an application to like create apps, and then you can list all your apps, and then but that then you have your projects might have different hypergraph versions, and then this app would get very complex. So it became clear it probably is way better when it's directly included into the hypergraph package, and then it's always tied to your project.
Mm,
Yeah,
like a
that
version control.
yeah. If you have hypergraph 0.3, then you're also gonna have TypeSync 0.3, and it's if you open it up in your project, it will know it's exactly tied to your schema version and so on, and
Nice.
that
So
makes it
coming
yeah.
from subgraphs and the spec version and that and the features, people have to update that subgraphs. Great job. Great job on that, Nick. Really nice work.
That's the idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we needed to learn that lesson as well because I mean, yeah,
I mean, that's the thing, like, working with you and so many other team members in this, the graph ecosystem, it's really based on so much experience. I mean, the amount of I'll call it altruistic suffering in terms of development. Like we're learning as best we can to help this decentralized network, and it was painful sometimes to like, okay, there's problems here, let's build it, and it's fun to see these decisions come to fruition based on just years of experience in this protocol. It's very cool.
yeah, yeah. And what do you have when you find a schema? And this schema here was came with the starter. Is when you remember this page. Where we list the projects. How do we actually fetch the projects? And that's that simple because what we have is from Hypergraph React, we expose a hook called use query. And yes, we're using use query for the public stuff as well. So if you used to use query from React query, this is exactly the same thing under the hood. But with difference, the data is actually typed automatically with project. And yeah, you there is also a mode for querying private data. That's why we have like mode public. Then you have to define a space. So from which space you wanna in this case, this is hard coded, and if you list spaces, or we also want to make that they can query from multiple spaces. So there's a change that's coming soon. But then I can say I want to just list the first 40 projects that you can find on the public knowledge graph in this space that are of type project, and it can find it because of this mapping. But yeah, this is kind of hard now. How do I find the right ID of the project type and so on? But with this UI tool TypeSync, this will be very easy and that simple. And then basically this is all you need: defining your schema, set up the mapping with the UI tool, and then you can fetch projects and you can list them. And then the beauty is, because you have it's based on exactly the schema that you defined. Um, if you have projects here, um, yeah, we can map it, and then you can see auto completion is terrible today. Then you can see how it automatically has correct TypeScript types, so it's strongly typed, and that makes it very nice to work with. And yeah,
Wonderful.
that's and you don't need to set up any database or anything. I mean, what you're doing is, yeah, you basically, in this case, fetching from the public knowledge graph. It's just an endpoint in this with a index, and you can get the data. And
Nice.
now, or do you have a question? Otherwise, I would move
Well,
on to
no, I
private
think
space.
I feel like this is an important point right here where you showed, I think, two files.
Yeah,
And as long as developers follow the quick start and also the fundamentals,
yeah,
this app and its schema and the data therein will be able to be published to the knowledge graph and composable and immediately built on by you and others. So that is really, really nice. Where, smart contracts, love them. I mean, and that has that element of composability, but there's just so, you know, they're a little bit more hard coded, we'll say, or a little bit more firmly, strongly typed language. And so to
yeah.
have this be more creative and more composable in this way,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the I think the difference in the goals we want to achieve. This is really for like actual building useful applications with general purpose data, and not specifically financial data.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
And
yeah,
yeah, I think it's also great that smart contracts are so strictly typed because it's financial.
yeah,
That's wonderful. That needs to happen. And with this being general data and app building, there's just the creativity potential is much higher. And I'm really hoping that there is people paying attention that desire more creativity in Web3, and this gives me hope for that, where I want to see more app builders building creatively.
yeah.
It's very cool.
Um, yeah, and then I can move on to private spaces. How do we actually create data and so on?
Mhm.
Um, and for that, we first have to sign in, or we need this private space that we have. And what we currently have is we have this idea that basically you also don't want to silo your data in an application, because you're basically going through a sync server that either you host yourself, or you use an existing one. But still, you don't want to, if this sync server is going down, or loses the ciphertexts of your data, it should not, or yeah, or the app builder is not in control of the data. You are in control of the data. This is the goal. And what we currently, how we approach this is basically that we have this GeoConnect account, which is, then connect.geobrowser.io, and there, you currently we're using Privy, But basically, what you can do there is, and I was signed in before, that's why I have these two spaces. What I can do is here, I can create spaces. I can create a private space, I can create a public space, um, and then give a specific app authentication to this space. So, for example, and then I get the ownership, and I think there's still a lot we need to learn and do and improve how the best give what's the best practices on like which apps should get which access to which space. But basically, what I could do in here is I could say I could create a new private space called test 2, and then I can choose, do I want to give this test 2 or this app access to this private space, and then I also have a test part 1, and I can say authenticate and redirect back to app. And yeah, this app is requesting write access to your public spaces, actually to the private spaces as well. And so we need to update the text here, but then we can say authenticate and redirect back. And there's a there's basically a callback happening, and in the URL you have what you do when you go there and authenticate, you share a public key, and then the data is encrypted and it's basically redirected with the encryption to get keys and so on and so forth. So it's all built in a way that it's end-to-end encryption. But what you have, or what you can see here is then, for example, you can have your private spaces. And what I can do is, and this is why we have addresses, or had addresses before in the schema. And these are just like, um, this is like the Flower Street 20, and I can create this address. And maybe I should actually show the network here with the WebSocket too, so you can see what I mean. Um, La La Land, um, 42. We have the socket. I think you won't see it now. With the, I need to refresh the page because then you can see here the messages. No, it's actually here.
Could you make that a little bit bigger on the inspector?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
I try to. What you can see here, for example, when I'm going to this page, because we have using the hook, or we have use space or use query, then it automatically connects to the sync server. That is defined here, and it does subscribe space, and then it gets data back from this space. So we have this space, and in this case we get events that are happening, like which members were added, and this is a signed it's kind of a signature chain. So it's like a mini blockchain per private space, and then you have key boxes to which have ciphertext with your public key and private key, and yeah, it's like very standard cryptography, nothing too fancy, which means it's also not on the like signal standard, but it's quite solid. Think, I mean, we certainly need to go for an audit before we ship a production version, but yeah, this
Yeah,
is
I
how we
like
operate.
how just baked in cryptography has advantages of privacy that just hasn't materialized in Web3, which I always thought was just kind of odd. Yes, there are chains that are privacy focused. Yes, there are certain dApps that are privacy focused that do achieve that. And they're reinventing the wheel, each of them. And they're doing it very well. I've actually known a few of these different teams. They're doing it fantastically. It also feels like we're aiming a little lower level with this, and at least with the GRC20 and knowledge graphs, having the idea of spaces from a deeper primitive. Not to say they're not working on it in their own way. It's just it's a I'm happy that privacy is baked in from day one, at least
Yeah,
considering that in terms of the entire stack of building.
yeah. Um, and yeah, what we can see now is if we actually add a new address, so new address, um, I don't know, 44 this time. What you can see is when I create a new update, there is certainly is good amount of metadata that the server receives and then the sync server and saves. But basically, what's happening is the update here. This is we need to actually. It's probably better if we base 64 encoded, but yeah, it works. Um, is what we this is the ciphertext. So that means this is like completely encrypted, and even if you have a network attacker at this point, who could read, they only can see the ciphertext and some metadata and the signature of the ciphertext and so on, of the entire update and which account address was. They cannot see the content. And this is what I mean with end-to-end encryption. And if you invite another user now to this space, which you can do, you could basically have real-time sync um, of your data on end-to-end encrypted data. And the best part, and this is the what I really care about is maybe
Backing
let's
up
be
real quick. So, like talking about sync, which with a knowledge graph is going to be very critical, having data syncing across things. It's
yeah.
local sync server and remote sync server. Can we talk about that a little bit more?
So there's no local sync server. It's just there's a you could host your own probably or for sure, um, but yeah, there is a sync server that you basically define, and then this is the sync server that you go through and connect has to go through to set up the connection and so on and so forth. Yeah. And this is the sync server also has a database. Currently, it's a SQLite database, and we're probably gonna stick to SQLite. But right now, and we probably do something very similar to Blue Sky, where we have a SQLite database per space, because that also means you can easily export it and switch between sync server. This is the idea.
Nice.
Um, but a sync server would, I mean, the sync server has a certain amount of metadata about your space and which are the members and so on and so forth. So we don't do a lot of like zero knowledge proof at this point, but it doesn't know anything about the content.
Yeah.
So even if the sync server gets hacked or um, whatever happens, basically you see a bunch of ciphertexts, but you don't know what the actual content is of an entity of a space. Um,
Nice.
and
Very nice.
that's quite nice. Yeah.
Very
And
nice.
so and that's why I wanted to show this. Yeah. You might type in here test part one, or new address 44. Yeah, new address 44. But yeah, this is a then it's encrypted and that goes to the sync server and you're only gonna decrypt it when you fetch it again, the data. And that what I care about or why what's so great about it, you don't have to worry about any of this. The only thing you need to know, okay, I can connect through GeoConnect, and then I can call USpace to get the name of the space. I can query the addresses, and the addresses are defined simply in the schema file, and then I can get the addresses. And what this does under the hood is basically is like, oh, so to um, I need to look for, okay, one thing I did here is basically I wrapped it in the where is it? In a Hypergraph space provider. Yeah, I basically set the space ID once. So what you also could do is you could, if you don't have the space provider, you have to provide here which space ID you want to have. But in this case, we said like, okay, we have multiple hooks here that all use the same space ID. So let's do a provider here that, so this here, this component is wrapped into a space provider. It's just the helper utility. But basically what we're doing here is like from this one space, fetch this one space from the sync server and decrypt everything and give me the address entities. And yeah, it knows it has to go to the sync server because it's private or not public. If I would go for public, it would try to fetch all the ones from public, which is a completely different interface. But yeah, and there all the data is public. And the best part is for me, you don't have to, you can build end-to-end encrypted applications and you don't have to know anything. You don't have to do a CS course.
Yeah, you're doing use query. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you can just work with data and fetch it and be done with it. And the same with create entity. you just have a hook called it comes also from Hypergraph React. Um, Use create entity, you pass in an address, and then you get a function. And basically, with this function, which again has um, now type safety. So if I would try to pass in the age 22, it will tell me sorry, but age is not defined in the schema, so don't
Yeah,
go for it.
it so it gets that right
Type
in the
safety.
actual. Yeah, that's really nice how it has that type safety. Really good.
Yeah, and if I leave things out, for example, the description is mandatory, it would also complain, hey, you need to provide description is missing in the type. Yeah.
I might have missed that in the recent update in the last few weeks or
No
months, but
worries.
that yeah,
That's
I
why
was
we are
like,
here,
oh,
right?
because I was
Yeah.
having to go back and forth a little bit, and like, oh, maybe that is needed, and here it is. That feels
And
nice.
actually, one thing that was deeply needed this week, or actually yesterday, we published a new version which also has type optional. So if you go to the schema, um, you could say, okay, I want the description, but what I want to have is it should be optional, and then it can be undefined or not. This is deeply need or was deeply needed as well because yeah, sometimes you have optional attributes properties. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
and
great work, Nick. So, with is there any other main things that you want to go over? I'm imagining hackathoners in the next few weeks are going to be watching this video, trying to
one
understand.
more thing I want to
Yeah, one
show
more
you.
thing.
Um, uh,
Yeah, we have ETH Global New York City
yeah,
coming up in a few
this should be
weeks
here.
here, which is quite exciting.
Yeah.
And
Um,
we have a few bounties. So if anyone's watching here, curious about Hypergraph and wants to build with it, now you're incentivized. So
uh, um, one thing I want to show is publishing. So once you have data in your private space, what you can do is you can publish it to a public space. So, for example, we have this new address 44 here now with this ID and so on and so forth, and we can publish it to a public space. Um, yeah, we can improve the feedback here. But basically, what it does is it uploads it to IPFS, and then you sign the transaction with your Geo Connect account and so on. And then I could go to the public spaces. uh, And I see, and before it did some tests, that's why you see more entities here, but we see this new address 44 that I just created and published. And this data actually is on IPFS and on a chain, and it's verifiable. And yeah, and again, oh God, terrible. uh, Again, the beauty is that if, for example, here public space, I simply do use query address mode public, and yeah, I have to provide the space ID, and I can get the data that I published.
you just essentially I mean, you're building a front end without any worry that I mean, of course, we're in development stages, but the crux of where you're headed is build your front end. Everything else,
Yeah,
don't really worry about it. Yeah, you'll have your schema, populate it, but there's a lot of stuff. We'll just call it stuff for the lack of a computer science term that's
yeah,
appropriate right now. That I have encountered. I remember Scaffold ETH has done a very good job at abstracting away a lot of the difficulties of hooks, wallet connect, a lot of these different are you doing hard hat? Are you doing foundry? I mean, it does a very good job of being a malleable framework for smart contract and front end development. This feels something like heading in that direction, where I had a eureka moment building Scaffold ETH, and I was like, okay, smart contracts, cool, front end, cool, and then we actually deploy an app, and this feels like a variation of that, of course, but it has that same kind of ethos at heart, where local development, fast development, and get something going as quickly as possible for the sake of just building something. Then this something is going to be a crypto friendly decentralized application that's not necessarily demanding it be a tokenized asset or something that is NFT related at its root, which is really, really, really cool shift.
yeah. That's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So As you can tell in the audience, I'm excited about this. I've had a preview of this for the last few months, helping out with the code, helping out with the docs, helping out with
Yeah,
things wherever I could.
fantastic. Thank you very much. The docs especially is like I'm so thankful that you set it up because from then on it was so easy to add things and
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. And oh, maybe there's something that I can hint to. We even it's still unorganized in that sense, but uh, docs. Um, we even have, which started to generate it this week. We have an LLM's TXT
Oh, that is nice.
generated
Okay.
from the documentation. We still gonna improve it because right now it starts with the advanced section and then somewhere time later, so it's unordered. But still, you could take this, drop it in your LLM as a
Yep.
reference, and
Yep.
this will give you a really, yeah, you can just tell
Cursor
the
rules,
LLM
cursor
like,
rules, cursor rules. Drop it in there and have fun.
yeah, and have
Yeah.
fun, and it's really good. Yeah, you can tell it
Cool.
to build applications, define the schema, and you're good to go. Yeah,
Very cool. And I want to piggyback on that. Number one, awesome having LLM integration acknowledged from the very beginning and saying, hey, this is where the world is heading. Also, the framework being at its core standardized, where you have a schema in a certain way and the data in a certain way. It feels, I mean, of course, hallucinations are going to be there. It's LLMs, but it feels more friendly to that
yeah,
kind of that model aspect of learning a certain database and learning a certain repository, and then from there just releasing Claude on it, releasing O3 on it, and saying, hey. And that feels more iterative in a less hallucinogenic way. I like that route where sometimes if you're building a completely different application, a completely different repository, there's hallucinations, which are fair. This feels
yeah.
repeatable and more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, in general, that's an approach I not so only see with humans. If you have strong typing, um, it's beautiful because you get an earlier feedback loop.
Yeah.
It's like if I think back to my jQuery times 15 years ago, um, what did I do? I made a change. I refreshed the browser. I
Yeah.
made a change. I
Every
refreshed the
time.
browser because the only way it was the
Yeah.
only way to figure out if it works. Yeah, and
Yeah.
now what TypeScript did with like very loose typing in the beginning was if you add TypeScript to a project where there's almost no typing, but you
Yeah.
gradually can reduce the amount where you actually go to the browser and refresh, but
Hmm.
get direct feedback. Hey, this create function takes two parameters. What are you doing? You don't have to
Hmm.
go to the browser to actually test that.
Hmm.
And the stronger the typing is, the better humans get at the
Hmm.
direct feedback loop because they have access to like they see the error right in front, and that's the beauty of like AI because it also can see the type checks right away
Right away.
if you're a
Yep.
good editor and iterate on it
Yep.
until it's type safe. You still might have something that goes wrong, but the chances
Always.
are much lower and it's
Yeah.
much better. And that's why I feel like you still with strongly typed APIs, you're still gonna have a better agentic experience. Yeah.
And it leaves room for the creativity where it belongs, which is
Yeah.
in terms of product. I
Yeah.
mean, you want to have something creative, different. Don't have it in the database. Don't get creative and try something different in hard
Yeah.
data, and where you have something that is just buried under. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Hypergraph abstracts that away, and you're really focusing on product. You're focusing on what your users want and doing something different, which uh, narrowing of creativity is a blessing in a lot of ways, and it just means for faster building, and that's really nice.
Yeah, and to stretch this one more time, of course, you can also do that with Web 2 applications and so on, but almost none of them, or yeah, there's nothing that gives you this like, oh, and if I do a query or if I create an entity, it automatically is end-to-end encrypted.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's
and
it's it's a crypto
you,
friendly full stack developing framework that doesn't have to be Web3.
yeah,
Like it is Web3
Yes.
It almost acknowledges where the internet is today, where it is
Yeah.
Web 2, it is Web 3. There's such overlap. And I feel like it hits this mark right in the middle
Yeah.
that can be super Web 3, it can be super Web 2. It's very well done.
Yeah.
So,
That's the idea. Yeah, we don't want to limit ourselves by this like yeah concept. We just try to do the best of all worlds and what makes the most sense. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you, Nick. This has been great. Every single time I take a look at this, I feel like I'm learning something. I learned something again today. So, is there anything that you'd want to say? I know for sure with ETH Global New York coming up in a few weeks, people are going to be watching this. Is there anything that you want to say to the hackathoners who are trying to understand Hypergraph and trying to get building quick?
Yeah, I mean, give it a try and give us feedback.
Mm,
Right now we're in a phase where we can still um, yeah, if you like the vision, now is the best time to jump in and provide feedback. And if you just like have ideas about like how to federate the sync servers the best, drop us a line and I would very much appreciate it. Yeah, and give it a try. Just don't run it in production, but then the rest is fine. Yeah.
yeah, not yet, not yet.
Not yet.
So
Yeah,
not
coming
yet.
soon.
Coming soon. Between X days and X, XXX days. Who knows? We're the building time. You deserve the time to focus on this because you've done so well so far with you and a few other developers who who you are if you're listening. There's a few of you out there that have been working very hard. So. Okay. Well, thank you, Nick, for your time. For those of you out there watching, thank you for joining another episode of the Graph Builders Office Hours. We're here every single Thursday at 5 p.m. UTC. And so, yeah, come on out, hang out with developers within the core dev community that is building the graph, and also hang out with other developers that are building on the graph tech. So, with that being said, Nick, thank you for your time, and everyone out there, thank you for joining. And yeah, Nick, stay on here. I'll close the stream, and then we'll
Okay.
head off. Awesome. Take care, everyone.